We're just entering an age where you can spin up multiple coding agents to work alongside you, massively scaling your output overnight. It's an incredible leap in productivity, but it also means conflicts multiply just as fast. And some of these conflicts can grind a project to a halt. In this video, I'll break down why these conflicts occur and some of my best practices to try to stay ahead of them. Okay, I'm going to kind of cut through this as briefly as I can. If you don't know about GitHub or Git or branches, then go watch my previous video or anybody's video out there that talks about Git or Git flow itself. GitHub is in the cloud, of course, a version of your repository. It's really the main version, and we call it source of truth. So we're making changes in local, we make these solid dot changes, that's good. We decide to push them up to GitHub, and the GitHub main branch looks just like our branch locally. Hunky-dory. This is probably the way you started working or you've been working if you've recently started checking into GitHub. Very standard single developer flow. But then we make a friend, and this friend says, hey, I can duplicate as many times as you like. I'd love to work with you. Fantastic. So we meet Codex Cloud. Hey, Codex Cloud, I just made you as a friend, so of course the first thing I'm going to do is put you to work. Great. Can you make some changes? I'm really interested in changing a few things on this main branch, if you don't mind. He starts cooking, I start cooking. I decide I'm going to change this pink button. If you look up in the GitHub world here, we have a button that's pink, and then down at local, I've decided to change that button to green. Okay, that's fine. I've also told Codex Cloud, can you change that button to peach? This is a very simple example, of course. We're trying to push both of those changes up and trying to put them both on main. There's a conflict. Which one is the truth? That's what we're really trying to get at. So Git and GitHub have kind of a concept of how you might manage this, and it's using these branches. So what we do is each developer, in this case, really each change gets its own branch. It's kind of the cleanest way to keep this work moving forward. There's one branch called branch 1 up there. That is the green button branch. There's branch 2. That's the peach button branch. And we both kind of work along happily until we're done. And at some point, I decide mine's ready. I'm going to push mine up. To do that, I need to set up a pull request. And this is just a document in GitHub that says, I am ready with my branch. I am asking others to say that it's cool to go. I'm trying to, as you can see, in that pull request, I'm going from a pink button to a green button, please, because it started at pink and my change is to make it green. I'm going pink to green. Everybody says, score, because it's pink right now. Looks like it's going to green. Push that in. Mine goes back in. Now here's the detail. The main branch actually has a green button. The button is actually green as far as GitHub knows. Codex has been apparently doom scrolling, but working on his own thing and has come up with, I have something that I want to push up. I'm trying to go, by the way, from a pink button to a peach button. The reason his origin is pink is he came out of the same main branch I was in, and that's when it was still pink. So when he asks to push his stuff up, GitHub itself says, we can't do that because I don't have a pink button. I do have a green button, but I don't really know that it's the same button, and I don't know that we would want to go from green to peach because you're saying go from pink to peach. So as you can see, the real problem is the base has changed a little bit. This change can't go in the exact same way as the last one. And this area of problem is what we call a merge conflict. It's the moment that you have to figure out which change goes to which and how you resolve these things. And this is really where the humans have to get involved. We will not be out of this job for a while. This takes judgment. This is us deciding which one is right. We won't, until we can really describe this very, very well to an AI, we won't have AIs that can cleanly do this that we can trust. So this is a place that we need to spend some time. And that's what this is all about. So let's find out how we can reduce how often we run into this and ways that we can kind of make it a little bit easier to deal with. Okay, we're going to be working on the Game Genie application that I've shared before, just a fun little sample app that I've built. And what we're going to be doing is changing this button color from pink to green to peach, or I hope to. Let's dive in and take a look at how we might make changes in Codex for this button. All right, it's worth me pointing out, if you are a subscriber to ChatGPT, on the left panel, you'll see a Codex link. When you click on this link, it will take you over to Codex itself. And when you're in Codex, then you can start asking changes of any different application that you've hooked together. We're going to be using the Game Genie Git Flow application. You can go into manage environments to add new repos if you have a repo out in GitHub. You do need to start with a GitHub repo. Remember, that's that source of truth thing. We absolutely need that for us to be able to see it and for Codex to be able to see it. All right, so it's also worth mentioning that they're going to be using the main branch. If you remember that blue line, that was the main branch, and then we peeled off of it for these sub branches. This is literally saying which line do we peel off of to start from. You can do that from any line. Main's the traditional one, so we'll start there. What I want to do is ask for changes to change this button to green and to peach in 2 different tasks. Let's take a look at that. All right, I have given it a screenshot of the screen we were looking at and saying on the logged in front page, there's a search button that's pink. I'd like to change it to green. We're going to kick that one off and let it go and cook. We're going to do the same thing for peach. All right, make it peach. And now, as you can see, we have 2 different jobs down here running from Codex. Codex is working on both of those at the same time. Okay, great. So now we have our green button completed. If we go into this, I want to give you a brief look at what's going on. And if you take a look at the changes that have been made, here is the button, and here is some information about what colors we're using. We're now moving to emerald instead of the featured color, whatever. You don't have to worry about that, but basically this is the green change that it's trying to make for us. That's great. It's also only made a change in one file, which is the control panel TSX file. Okay, excellent. But what do we do with this now? This is actually the problem. Really, Codex has us covered, and it's really the most dangerous thing that they added, and it's also a superpower. So let's go take a look at Codex, the extension, in something like Visual Studio Code or Cursor. Okay, so I'm using Cursor. You can use Visual Studio Code. I'm not really using Cursor as Cursor. It's just my version of Visual Studio Code, if you will. I have the extension already installed. If you go here and find the extensions, you'll be able to find the Codex panel, basically extension that you can install. Once you install that extension, then you will have a button or some way to be able to pull out the Codex panel. So you can see the peach one is still grinding away, but our green one is complete. So let's go take a look at that. Inside of here, we can see the same information that we saw on the other one. So we're featured foreground color that we're dealing with. Hover is featured, going to emerald. Good enough. The one button that I wanted to point out that's actually quite dangerous, but also a superpower, is this apply button. This is a brand new pattern. Codex Cloud actually made the changes in Codex Cloud. They have done nothing else with GitHub. They haven't pushed it up. They have it in their own laptop. So every task in Codex Cloud, think of it as a laptop. That laptop has these files in it. This just allows us to kind of take a look at what they've done and see the conversational history. What I want to advocate here is if you click this apply button, I'm going to give you what I think is the most optimal success pattern for using this apply button. It is view only. Up here in Codex, if you recall, what we asked it to do is start in main. So this branch up here is saying, I want you to take all of the information out of main, check it into your own laptop, pull it down, basically, check it out, and then when you are in that branch, make the changes. Now you have a different version of main. It's not really main anymore. Main source of truth still exists. My machine over here is also running on main. If you click on this, you'll see the different branches. There's one in the cloud in GitHub. They call it Origin is the typical name. And that's the branch in GitHub. And this is my local one. When I choose it, it brings a local copy onto my hard drive as well. And I can make changes as well as Codex make changes at the same time. We saw that in our previous diagram. That's where this gets a little bit risky. What I will say is this word down here in Visual Studio Code and Codex and other tools that are VSC kind of backed will get pluses and asterisks and a couple other indicators that it's dirty or it has changes. There's also a button up here that you can see the changes in this workflow or in this branch right now. So if I had a change on some given file, then we would see it here. Let's make a change to the README. And when we do that, you'll see that the changes pop in here. And these are the changes that we've made. And we now have an asterisk down here that says, hey, a tracked file is updated that hasn't yet been committed. So you kind of want to be aware that you have changes local. I don't want to hit apply when I have a dirty branch. So what I want to do is make sure that I discard my changes or check your changes in, move them to another branch, be safe. I'm not saying just discard everything. That would be a terrible pattern. Please don't just go do that. But what I'm trying to say is if you get to a clean version of main, which is what this change came from, then we can just hit apply. When we hit apply, what's actually happening is it's taking the changes from that cloud computer and bringing them down to our computer. And you'll see in this change panel, the same change that was happening up here. So if I open this, it will be the same diff that we are looking at. Impossible to see this way, but okay. Here you go. This is the change that we were looking at the other way. Okay, so let's take a look at the change itself. This is the change that we just got. And if I'll hit the revert button, the traditional way to do this, I'll hit the revert button. You'll see it will go back to pink. And eventually this is taking a second to update, but this will remove these changes. We're back to a clean main. If I apply it again, all it's doing is taking those files, bringing them down into my environment, changing them as you can see, and then we'll see the change here once again. So what I'm doing is I'm taking their changes and just applying them over the top of my clean main, the same root branch or base branch that they use. I know this sounds complicated. This is the pattern. You're done. Don't do anything else. Don't ask for anything here. Don't go make file changes. Don't commit anything. Don't check anything in. This is view only. If you're just getting started here, this is not to make changes with. It might be very tempting to say, well, this green is a little bit too bright. I want to make it a little bit darker. This is not the place to do that. You can do that and then commit them yourselves in your own branch or your own PR or something else. But what happens in that case is you have a version, Codex has a version, and both of them need to figure out how to get back to main or which one needs to get back to main. Okay, to simplify what I'm trying to say is when you pull changes down, you want to think of them as read-only. This apply and revert mechanism is kind of a brand new pattern. It's a patch file pattern that generally we don't use and the tools don't support that well. They won't give you as much visibility to what's going on, and AI won't have as much ability to kind of revert or understand what happened. So it's best to say, okay, I am going to revert this change. This is a cloud change. Remembering that we were on Codex with this change to green. That's great. If I like this change, then I need to push it from here. And we can say, okay, let's create a PR out of that. This is the right pattern. From here, we have moved these files off of the Codex environment as the source and moved them up to GitHub as the source of truth. So now GitHub has these files. And of course, if we go view the PR, then we will see the same commits, the same changes that we were seeing before from the featured color to emerald. So this is the concept of what we're trying to do. We're trying to use GitHub as the central multi-flow environment so everything can control it. Now we have the change search button color to green from Codex. If I move to that branch, you'll see we are on the green branch now. So if I move back to main, you'll see it's pink. And if I move to the green, you'll see that it's green. If I am done with this branch, or if I'm done with this change and I like the darker green, then I can create a PR or create a commit against it, push that up to GitHub, and then that's part of that whole branch. That branch gets updated with this new change. Okay, let me show you a reason to get to the clean base branch that something was built from. If you recall, the change that we asked for from Peach, we came off of main and said, please turn the button into Peach. I am still on the PR branch that we created to go to green. So you can see we have our green button. But what I figured I would do is let's try to apply these Peach changes. Do they even work? I may as well just drop them over the top. I, again, am not on the right branch. This is not the branch it was created with. If I hit apply here, it has put the changes on top of this branch. So they do exist, but our button didn't change. And the curiosity there is, not surprisingly, it made the change for going to green in a different way that it made the change to going to peach. And now on the button itself, we're saying emerald. But what the peach did is it came back and said, oh, I'm going to change our feature color. Instead of the feature color being pink, I'm going to make the feature color peach. And though that's not at all what we asked for, and this one wouldn't have passed, if the screenshot had come back and showed me a peach button, I would have been very happy, only to later discover after I just auto-approve it, that every other place that I have the featured color of pink has now also changed to peach, which is not what I was asking for. But the neat thing is this got to apply over the top, but the button saying he's emerald is the guy that's winning, and that's the reason we can't see this difference. So let me come back to this. Let me revert, and I'll show you. We can come back to main, if you recall. Main is a pink button still, and this is, we're in a clean main. this is where this guy should be applied. If we apply him in this case, what it's going to do is then it's going to take those files and it's going to change all of those feature colors to the peach that we were looking for. And that's the reason to say wherever the branch, wherever your request was, whatever moment that branch was, that's where you want to apply these changes if you're using this apply button. This apply button is really just tricky altogether. I would say if you're not really fast saying, I asked for something, I really want to quickly look at it, nothing else has changed in my environment, then it's probably worth it. As your main starts moving forward, you'll run into the same exact problem. So that PR that we've created, we're going to go look at accepting that PR. When we accept that PR, if we use this apply button, it still won't work. And you won't know why. It's not an obvious thing. And that's all because they've created this new mechanism for taking the changes and just very quickly trying them on as a shirt to see how it looks. But the reality is you have to use the exact same body that the shirt was built for. You can't have a different body. All right. With that, let's go take a look at how do we move from multiple PRs or having PRs into out of a merge conflict into a clean main. Okay, here we are in Codex. You can see the green one we've already created a PR out of. So they have a nice disclosure out here, even at the top list, to know which ones you've moved back into GitHub and where GitHub is the source of truth. We have not done that for Peach yet. Let's go to Peach and say we want to create a PR out of that. And what I will briefly describe to you here is creating a draft PR. So there's two, or not really two different kinds of PRs, but there's a status value on a PR that says it's really ready, or please approve this or start approving it and checking it to see if it's okay to go, or I can create a draft one. The real distinction is if we have some of those bots and auto systems that kick off on a PR and start reviewing it, you might want to create a draft PR. Now we have two different PRs. If we click on this PR, we will notice that this is a draft PR. It's up here and this side over here, and you can convert this draft PR to a ready PR when you feel like these changes are up to date. The way to do that very simply is if you scroll down, you'll see that down here is a block that is saying, this is still just a draft PR. It's a work in progress. Click this button to put it into ready for review. That's all. Once I click this, it becomes a mergeable PR, or at least a reviewable one that the bots will start kicking off and doing their own work. Okay, so we now have two PRs. We have the green one and we have the peach one, if you recall. They also have these cool little icons to indicate whether it's a draft or ready to be merged or kind of a ready PR. What we're going to do is quickly come back down here and check out one of these and go back to our green, start a new chat and say, make the green home button purple instead. So what I'm really illustrating is once they become PRs, or really moreover actually branches, you can then check the branch out locally and ask it to do work against that branch. Okay, back up in Codex, you see we have the peach one up here, remembering that we created a draft PR out of it, but that doesn't mean once it's a PR or once it's a branch, that you can no longer make changes here. Let's say we came to this one and said, we want to make the peach color of the homepage button to red. All right, we're gonna let him cook a little bit. And in fact, the other green one has already completed. Let's flip over, we've gone green to purple. So now we have changes here locally, and this is the green to purple change. So at this point, if we're happy with this, we can say, create a purple button. Not a great commit message, but it'll work. And then I'm going to push that change up. So now I've personally, on my desktop, made changes to the green PR to make it purple. This is going to get complicated. Everything's a different color. All right. So now what we're going to go do is take a look at what happened in GitHub when we did that. So here is our green PR. If you remember, it opened a PR with trying to move to green, and it had one commit against it and one file changed. If I reload, you can see it now has two commits against it. So in other words, the PR represents a branch trying to move into another branch, basically. So you can continue to make changes and submit them back to this PR, and they will get picked up. And in here, you'll see this was the original one by Codex making this change. And then this was the commit message we just put in, a purple button. So now we're back down to code changes that bring us to a purple button. And if we want this, we can just merge it, move it in, and it becomes part of main. So what I will do is I will hit that, confirm the merge, and let it move into main. And main will now be purple, weirdly, okay? I also want to indicate you should be deleting your branches. Don't if you leave your branches laying around everywhere, eventually you'll have 100 of them. They'll all be old, and it will become far more difficult to figure out what you can clean up and what you still want to keep. So if you merge something, simply just go delete the branch itself. It doesn't really remove anything. All those changes, all the information's still there. Don't worry about it. It's just kind of a housekeeping kind of thing. Okay, and here back in Codex, the change has occurred, and it has now updated the values of the featured color, which we didn't want in the first place, but that's what it's doing. This gets just a tiny bit complicated, so I want to show it to you. I have a branch to show the peach one. If we show the branch for the peach one, you'll notice that it's still peach, but we just changed it to red. Try to remember. So this one is supposed to be red. Why is it not red? Well, remember, this Codex guy is working on his own laptop. We need to go tell him, when you've made a change, we can do a couple things. I can update the branch and push it up to his branch, and that will allow me to then pull the branch again and have the changes locally. Or I can come down here, find this difference, and hit apply, and maybe it will work. Admittedly, I am now out of sync because the branch that it is submitting it to is against a different branch. It's not against its own branch. Its base branch is still that early clean main. So if I really wanted to do this, notice I'm getting a partially reverted conflict here. So what I want to do is just clean everything as much as I possibly can because I haven't made any changes, and get back to a clean state, and then jump over to our main branch, which is what we really need to do because all of this is still based on the main branch as it was. This is super complicated because I do have the main branch as it was, but you'll see in a second that there's actually some commits that we just pushed into main. So there's a new main in the source of truth. We should hit this button to pull them down. If I did that, I would then once again be out of sync with being able to apply this, and it really probably would not work because of the way the main branch now works. If I apply it here, if I hit reapply, we get the red button. If I revert them, I go back to the peach button or the pink button. If I then pull from the cloud, we will then move over to our purple button. And if I apply again, it will apply, but it actually won't show because if you recall, the way it made the change is overridden by the way this purple made the change. So talk about complicated. This all just got introduced because we're trying to do this very quick view apply button. It is a train wreck. You have to be very careful with the way that you're doing it. And your mileage will absolutely vary depending upon whether or not you know how to get to your cleanest main of the representation of when you asked for the request. I would say best pattern, don't use the apply button unless you really understand I just made that change on the branch I'm looking at. Let me very briefly look at it. That's literally the only thing you should imagine. Any time passes, any other changes occur, the apply button is not okay for any older request. You may be able to use it still, but you're also going to get yourself twisted up into a place where you have merge conflicts that you have to resolve locally. It's kind of a mess. They've introduced this. I think it's a good idea, but they really should have done it with branches itself and been able to temporarily move into a branch, take a look at it, and move you back out of that branch. But these tools will get better. This is just where they are today. Okay, one last thing that I want to cover before we close on this. I know this got a little bit long. How you construct your application and how you ask for your changes really, really matters in the future. And what I mean by that is something that I talk about quite a bit on this channel is separation of concerns. It's an old engineering kind of catchphrase, but it really means breaking down what you have from your problem set into smaller and smaller parts, and also, frankly, smaller and smaller individual files. So if you had very great separation of concerns, multiple functions all throughout, that everything represented one little thing, but it was all still in one file, then what we just saw is an example here where we make a single change, something very small, it will have to update that file. Any other change you make will also have to update that file. That creates more complexity when you're doing merges. So it gets more and more difficult for it to keep track of all of the changes had to change this one core file. If you want to have one file that has all of your information in it, that file will have to be changed all of the time. The more you break that down, the easier it is to be able to say, and here is the final mitigation that I will give you. It's a really meaningful one. You will want to put requests out into Codex Cloud that don't overlap or overlap as little as possible. That will greatly ease the concerns that you have when you're trying to merge these back together. Again, if you recall, This is our job. This merge, this is actually our job. We have to do it. That's okay. We can make it easier on ourselves by saying, I'm not going to ask in 2 subsequent requests to change the front page, much less the exact same button, much less any logic on there. So if you're going to make one request on change the logic of the front page, maybe your second request should be for a different property. Oh, on the channel page or on the detail page, I do this or whatever else. So try to separate your concerns when you're asking for changes that are parallel. It's okay to then go ask for another change to the homepage in another request once the first one lands. Once you've merged that PR back in, that's okay. But doing them at the same time, doing them in parallel, this is something that's perilous even for human engineering teams today, and it always has been. It's something that a lot of meetings and coordination and all of these different artifacts that we have to keep our teams in sync, that's what we're trying to mitigate generally, is are you working on this? If you do this, I need to wait until you're done until I can push mine in because I'm working on something that he needs, but he can't move forward. This is something that is now going to be your concern because you're now managing a whole bunch of other agents that are doing the work. Understanding that a little bit better will help, and knowing, I see, this is about the database. I can ask for that change once, and I can ask about the homepage. It may call the database, but it's probably not going to change the database. And this is where engineers will have a much bigger leg up being able to work in this multi kind of developer workflow than people that are brand new, but it's not hard to catch up. It's easy to kind of start to understand these concerns and separate them a little bit and say, oh, I need to break this part of my application apart because I keep having merge problems here. Or I keep having a problem with everybody wants to change this file. Go ask the AI to separate it in some way so that merge constraints later won't be a big problem for you. All right. I hope this was helpful. This was really twisty to put together because I only touched on maybe 20% of the real issues that are in this and really didn't get technical on most of it. And I apologize. Go out and do some searches. Find a couple other videos that are going deeply into any of the areas that you weren't quite clear on, because this is really complicated underneath the covers. But if you get a reasonable flow and you always follow that flow, put the request in, create a PR of it, always work just out of GitHub at that point, you can still use stuff from Codex to push more things and update the PRs. That's perfectly fine. But don't think of it as, oh, I can make changes in multiple places and all of this will just fit back together and AI will take care of it. That's not going to happen anytime soon. So I hope this helped. Thanks for coming along for the ride on this one, and I'll see you in the next one.